Local programming on KRWG Public Media made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Fronteras, a Changing America. I'm your host, Anthony Moreno. According to data from the U.S. Census Bureau, in 2011, nearly 43% of Hispanic college students were in two-year colleges. From 2011 to 2016, that number held steady, while Hispanic enrollment in four-year colleges grew by almost 700,000. On the program today, we will learn more about some of the issues facing Latinx college students and resources that are available to them by speaking with Interim Director of Chicano Programs at NMSU, Dr. Judith Flores Carmona, and Marisela Mendoza, Program Coordinator. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Dr. Flores Carmona, I'd like to start with you. Obviously, the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted all of our lives, and it's definitely impacted higher education. I'd like to hear from you how the pandemic has impacted the mission of your department.
Well, we are still serving as the center that provides advocacy and support services to all of NMSU students. Being a Hispanic serving institution, of course, our office is the hub for the issues concerning Latinx students in particular, but we do serve all students. We've been impacted by basically going from face-to-face, in-person programming to virtual programming. And we kicked off with Hispanic Heritage Month or Latinx Heritage Month. And we are still open to students via appointments, via Zoom or in person even. We have our lab still open. So things are still going kind of smoothly, but of course we are faced with situations and issues that Latinx students are facing and our local communities as well.
Marisela, could you share with us a little bit about the programs that you have in store virtually now and how students are interacting with them?
Sure. So we started off with our Welcome Back event, which is like a little resource fair for the students. We did have to do that online, and the video recording is still available. We're using a platform on YouTube, and we're using Zoom platforms as well to show our programming. We also had a speaker September 15th, which had approximately 200 viewers that joined us that day. We are looking at programming on September 13th in collaboration with the ACC. It's an event called History, Healing, and Celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. So look forward to that invitation. And we also have an upcoming speaker on October 15th. Dr. Saltivan and Dr. Kessel will be joining us on those days.
Okay, now obviously when you're trying to plan programs, you plan maybe a semester or at least a year, perhaps a year in advance. With the pandemic and things, there's so much uncertainty happening right now. How do you adjust or adapt to this when you're trying to program?
It's been really hard, especially for me coming into this position just a couple of months ago. We've been able to adjust, and I'm very lucky to have a great team of a great staff, Marisela, Joseph, and Jonathan. And we also we are the advisors for the Hispanic Council, and that's all of the Latinx student organizations at NMSU. And they've been doing a great job also just starting to plan for the spring semester. And they have to have contingency plans in case we were to do face-to-face programming. But it's been hard, but not impossible. And we are trying to do that more with And just to correct the date for the next presentation, it'll be October 13th. And it's a collaboration between Doña Ana Community College and NMSU.
Okay, so obviously I've mentioned earlier that the pandemic has hit so many folks. We know here in New Mexico that it has certainly impacted Hispanic families, communities of color, and underserved communities. What are some of your concerns, Dr. Flores Carmona, about how this may impact the next generation of college students or even the current generation?
We are seeing that students are feeling disconnected, disengaged. I do checking-ins with students. I'm teaching a class on Mondays, and some of the issues that came up are around feeling like they're procrastinating, feeling like they're not doing as well. There's also, of course, mental health issues coming up, feeling sad or depressed. We also have families that have other children or youth who going to school virtually, and so that makes it a little hard for them to focus. They have expressed concerns around having to share one laptop, for example, for everybody in the household to do their work. We also have been in conversations with LCPS, with Blanca Ontiveros, and she and her team have talked to us about dire need for tutors for families who don't even know how to use the tablets that they're getting, or not having enough hotspot providers or services, internet. I think that the digital divide is very real. Mm-hmm. And this is impacting the students currently at NMSU, of course, future generations. As we know, New Mexico ranks pretty low in terms of educational attainment, but that's not disconnected from the health disparities that we have encountered. And as you said, Latinx populations and African American populations have been the most impacted. Of course, our Native communities as well. And so these are serious issues that we need to address and start working with and partnering with local school districts and communities. I think of the colonias who may not even have good providers for internet. And so that's very real. And we are doing our best to provide resources through Chicano programs. We put together a list of, actually Marisela put it together, a list of resources that we can have access to. And as soon as Blanca Ontiveros told us that they needed tutors, we sent out the call for that. So we are working very closely, and we're listening, and we're paying attention to the situations that are happening and that are very real. And I'm sure that this will impact future generations of college-going students.
Now, I mentioned that the rise in Hispanic college students that have started four-year institutions. Are you concerned, Dr. Flores Carmona, that this may impact that number or that rising number with the pandemic?
To be honest, yes, I do think that it's a situation that we need to start looking into. I also work for the Honors College, and we have a new dean, Dean Fame Camarena, and we've been in conversations, like I said, with LCPS to try to make that connection or that pathway to going to college more of a reality for the local communities especially. And so we are having those conversations almost weekly. We're meeting with them, and it's something that we know that it's something we need to work on right now to prevent that from happening, or to actually help our communities to aspire to go to college, to know what college is. Marisela can talk a little bit about a handout that we have that we can provide to families. It's bilingual, and it explains, I think that a lot of the unknowns about what it's like to go to college or what it entails to go to college is something that we need to start addressing now. And
what are some of the challenges when you're speaking with families who are considering college for their children, or assisting their kids on college visits. Now things are obviously a lot different with perhaps virtual college visits, and it may be harder to obtain information on the college experience. Obviously, it's very confusing for some first-generation college students. So I'd like to hear from you, like, how are you adapting? And you mentioned Marisela has some information on that. How do you think that, obviously the language barrier could be an issue. How do you think that reaching out to families is going to change right now?
We've been doing a lot of the welcome orientations virtually. We did that during the summer. We worked very hard on that. I think the information that we can provide through Chicano programs in Spanish is very valuable. I think that a lot of offices on campus gotta work on that, especially during these times, and figure out how to send that information and make that information available to families, not just virtually, but maybe by sending pamphlets or taking pamphlets to the Office of Education and distributing them through there. Maybe that's one option. We are trying hard to do recruitment. And of course, we do it virtually. And sometimes, or during these times, we depend a lot on students and them doing their own outreach at the high schools where they graduated from. Mm-hmm. I know we do that through the Honors College, and Hispanic Council is also really good about staying connected to the communities and the communities that they came from. So we're working hard on that. But maybe Marisela can talk a little bit about what's included in that pamphlet that we use through Chicano programs for recruitment.
I mean, how do you feel this, Marisela, this pamphlet can help? Can you share that information?
Sure. So the pamphlet is what we called Preparing for College Workbook. So it basically starts off with statistics on why achieving a higher education is beneficial to students. The former director used to give a training, and we're working on giving trainings on that. So it starts off with that information, then it goes on to what steps you can take starting freshman year to achieve a good outcome by the time you're in 12th grade, and hopefully by then you'll be visiting campuses, applying to financial aid. It gives you tips on how to apply for scholarships, how to build a resume. So all those skills and qualifications that you need to be able to apply for a higher education.
There's obviously a lot of things that may be confusing about the college experience, especially for someone who doesn't have any information, or perhaps no one in their family has went to college before. I'm sure our audience understand that, but I'd like to hear from you, Dr. Flores Carmona, about the challenges, moving on to some of the challenges that face Latinx college students today. You mentioned that some students that you work with go back to their high schools and help out. I think about this a lot, but I mean, it's already challenging enough for some of these students to navigate college and then deal with perhaps other issues that they may be facing in their lives, but they're still making time to go and talk to the next generation?
So I can honestly speak from personal experience. I am myself a first generation college student and scholar, and when my mom visited one of the schools that I was doing a summer program at, she saw one building and she thought that was the university. And so I think that reality is around us. A lot of families have never set foot on at the NMSU campus. That's also another reality. And being able to translate that to families is very hard, right? Because unless you have experienced it, you don't really know what you're getting yourself into. Being able to navigate higher ed was difficult as a first generation college student for me. And I know that I can relate to a lot of students because of that. So we can start by sharing our personal experiences. That's one thing. We have what they're called college ambassadors, and each college has ambassadors here at NMSU. Um, and Chicano programs has Hispanic Council. And they are, it's part of their extracurricular activities to get involved. It builds up their resume, but it also helps them to see how they can be a bridge between high school and college. And I forgot to mention they were also working with Mesilla Park Elementary, already starting and continuing the work that Dr. Laura Gutierrez Spencer did with a project called Generaciones, which involves mothers and daughters. My hope is that we would start as early as kindergarten to introduce college going culture and the language to the families and to the communities, and actually bring them to NMSU and show them what NMSU is and does, different majors, expose them to different activities on campus besides coming to watch a football game or a basketball game, see what the academics is about. And I think sometimes when we see ourselves reflected in the staff, in the faculty, in the on campus at NMSU, then we feel a sense of, not only a sense of belonging, but we also feel welcomed. And I think that that's very important, especially because NMSU is right here, right in Cruces, and it's uh, it's important that that we build those relationships with the community and with the schools, and that they feel like they are a part of NMSU. They are part of the Aggie community.
Now, reaching students about college, to speak with them about college at a younger age, is there specific research that kind of shows that this works?
Yes, actually, I used to be part of a partnership in Salt Lake City, Utah. I graduated from the University of Utah, and it's a partnership called Adelante. It's a college awareness and preparatory partnership that started working with youth as early as kindergarten in dual immersion classrooms. And we would bring them to the University of Utah, the College of Education, but different colleges on campus. And they would get to see scientists that look like them. And all manifestations of identity, right? Race, class, gender, etc. And they saw themselves reflected there. And we had summer camps um, during the summer that were bilingual, and they focused on STEM. And it was phenomenal to include not only the families, but for the youth, for the children to feel like they could go to college one day, and to have the president of the university welcome them and talk to them about that. And that's something that we're working on right now with Las Cruces Public Schools. We want to establish something like that, where actually we create a clear pathway to go to college. As we know, New Mexico ranks pretty low, and that's something that we can definitely work from within. And so I'm partnering with a couple of professors um, and with CAMP, College Assistant Migrant Program here at NMSU. And we are doing our best to try to establish that partnership that serves the Latinx, and I mean all of New Mexico. We got to start in our own backyard to do this work.
I want to move on and talk about the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, DACA. How has the uncertainty of the program impacted students who may be in the program that you work with?
I'm going to let Marisela talk a little bit about that, but as I share with you, I was also, I'm first generation, but I was also one of the first DACA beneficiaries, right? And I know it's like all of these things, but we are committed to making sure that these students succeed and thrive at NMSU. The uncertainty, of course, is we are very aware of that, and but Marisela has lots of great information, and has done a lot of work with youth who were beneficiaries of that.
So I would like to invite everyone who is watching to check out our website, chicano.nmsu.edu. And there's a tab under there that has DACA/undocumented student resources. We have a list of legal providers. We have a list of scholarships that students can apply to, because most of the barriers they face is paying for school because they don't receive the federal aid that citizens do. So with that being said, the scholarship list is on there, as well as we can guide you to other external resources that we may know about for these kinds of students. And yes, like Dr. Carmona said, we are committed to supporting these students and their families. Also be aware of how to navigate this system because it is very new to them. And most of them are also first generation as well as undocumented. So that adds a lot of different barriers and unknown places that they are yet to discover.
Now there is a number of, I mean, we're talking about a program that's impacted hundreds of thousands of people across the country, not only students, but working professionals and people in the military. But with the uncertainty of the program, there were folks who were hoping that they would be able to enroll in the program and haven't been able to do that yet, and they may not have legal status here. What are some resources that you mentioned that students should check out, or maybe some things they should consider if they don't have legal status in the U.S.? Why should they obtain a higher education if they're not sure about their future here in the United States?
Even though the uncertainty is there, and I know like me, myself, or many other students have mixed status families, attaining a higher education can only serve them well for the future and for their well-being. I know that a lot of youth, even though they are not able to practice, for example, in the US, or because of the uncertainty of DACA, a lot of them, some of them have gone back to their countries, even though they came as children and they may not even speak the language, but they are becoming very successful. And I hope that that's not the case, that more youth have to leave. But I think attaining a higher ed degree can only serve them well in their communities and their families as well. I know that it's a dream for many youth to do that, to have a higher ed from the United States, and I don't want to have them lose hope, I guess, that there might be some positive change that could come in the future for them. But the reality is that we're having to think about what the future of that guy is. And at least in Chicano programs, we are ready to provide them with resources and support so that they can continue completing their education at NMSU. And I know that there are other states where they have more rights or access to more resources than we do here. And I just hope that those that are watching us can get informed about what DACA is and about the benefits that having access to an education can have for our communities and for the state, for the country.
Dr. Flores Carmona, what are some of your goals that you hope to be able to obtain while serving in this role as interim director of Chicano programs here at NMSU? What type of impact do you want to bring, and what is your vision for this department so it can serve students?
I am a scholar who does a lot of work in education. Like, that's my background. It's in sociology of education. And it's actually looking at access or the opportunity gaps for people whose identities are from the margins, right? In terms of race, class, and gender. Access is a huge thing for me in terms of the work that I do, and looking at the injustices or the oppression that youth may face to attain a higher education. So my vision has been to serve as, so I'm a scholar and I love to write and publish, but I also like to see how these things can become practical. How do you put the theory into practice, basically? So while I'm in this position, even though it's for a little bit of time, I hope that I'm able to inform the need to do programming that allows us to bridge student success services with the academic side of things, but also to, as I always say, serve the whole student, mind, body, and spirit. So do programming and provide services that are able to, that allow us to grow as scholars, that allow us to go to conferences, for example, present at conferences, and really draw from the wealth of knowledge that Latinx communities have, that students of color possess, and show that through the work that we're doing, not just through the programming, but also in the services that we provide, in the resources that we make available, in the partnerships that we can develop with the community.
Okay, well, unfortunately, we're out of time, but I want to thank you so much, Dr. Judith Flores Carmona and Marisela Mendoza with Chicano Programs at New Mexico State University. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We want to thank you for joining us for the program. Remember, you can always keep up with the latest news at our website, krwg.org. I'm Anthony Moreno. We'll see you next time.